Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to another video on photography. I'm going to focus on an area in the State Fair catalog today called health, and there's a section of it called dealing with stress, which focuses on photography that illustrates a hobby or interest that helps an individual to reduce stress. So to any of my 4-Hers out there listening, there's a category for this if you choose to submit photographs into the State Fair that relate to this topic. And also keep in mind that there are lots of different ways to reduce stress in life whenever you're finding subject matter for this. So I'm going to provide you with some examples and in a slide with some subject matter that you can choose from and at least give you a starting point or some direction on choosing your own subject matter. But I'm going to focus more specifically on art in this particular presentation because art is personally, for me, very therapeutic. And as a clay artist, as a potter and a sculptor, I'm going to show you some pictures of my work. But at the same time, I'm going to show you or give you some basic concepts on how to take clear pictures in general. So with that said, we'll move on to the next slide. And I want to focus a little bit on the devices to use. Again, if you don't have any a special camera, that is okay. You can use what you already have. Even if it's a cell phone, just keep in mind that the lens on a cell phone is very small. There's not as many pixels in that lens as there are in other cameras. So even though it will take a good quality picture, if you print it off in sizes any larger than 4x6 and 5x7, it's going to look pixelated. It's not going to look very clear. So that's because, again, there aren't enough pixels in the lens. So you're more limited in that regard, but cell phones do take very clear pictures. And point and shoots are still another effective option if that is what you have. But if you don't have it, a good example here is a Kodak PixPro FZ53. You can buy that at Walmart for about $70. And there are other point and shoot cameras that you can use that are built with similar settings that this one has. So just keep that in mind. But remember that the camera isn't doing all the work whenever you're taking pictures, because it also depends on how well you can visualize your subject matter. So having a good eye makes a big difference in the long run too. And no matter how skilled you are with a camera, no matter how skilled you are visually with your subject matter, you're not going to get a clear picture if you don't keep your camera still. So that is very important. Depending on the setting that you're in, for instance, if you're in a room with, say, a hard floor, that's going to be easy to stand on, but it's not going to be as easy to sit or lay down on if you're taking pictures of various angles of your subject matter. So do what it takes to make your body comfortable. Lay blankets on the floor, lay pillows on the floor, whatever necessary to help you keep your camera still so that you can take clear pictures. And that seems self-explanatory, but it's good to be reminded of that. So finding your subject matter. This goes back to what I was saying in the first slide. There's lots of different things to choose from in regard to relieving stress. It doesn't have to be art. Some people like to hike, fish, sing, cook, play board games, and even play an instrument. And the list goes on depending on what works for you. So just keep something in mind for your subject matter. And no matter what that subject matter is, it's always important that in photography we understand contrast, because that really helps our subject matter stand out. Having colors in the background and in our surroundings and on the surface of what our subject matter's on will help us do that. That helps us create successful photographs. And some of the elements that you'll see in this presentation are of clay sculptures, most of which that are red in color. And any focus that is red, for instance, will contrast more nicely with background elements that are either green or neutral. And you've seen this color wheel before. I'm showing you that again just to let you know that when choosing colors in your surroundings or colors that surround your subject matter, find colors that are complementary to it. So, in other words, on the color wheel, if my subject matter is red, which getting to this example here, as I said, the clay is red, um, you want to find elements in your surroundings that are preferably not in the red family because your subject matter will blend in too much and it'll be easy to lose focus of what you're trying to show. So focus on the opposites. Focus on greens because green is red's perfect complement. But if you focus on colors that are deep, deep colors that are surrounding green, or even neutrals like white, black, brown, and gray, that's going to help your subject matter stand out more. So this just reiterates what I said. Effective backgrounds and backdrops are your advantage, and they will vary depending on the colors and elements that help your subject matter stand out. Outdoor examples are trees and leaves. Indoor examples are neutral colored walls, such as white, black, brown, and gray ones that are in those tones. And getting back to this page here, as I was saying, with outdoor settings with trees and leaves, this is a shrub in the background, and the green color of it is what stands out against this red. And also the surface that this is on is a rustic wooden table, which is very gray in color, and gray is a neutral, and that also stands out against the color in my subject area. So lighting and composition. Of all there is to learn about photography, your skills will significantly develop by learning these two terms. From then on, practice will evolve and improve your skills. So I'm going to explain lighting and composition a little bit. And we're going to start with lighting. Lighting makes a big difference, and it doesn't matter how well you're arranging your subject matter or how well balanced it is. If you don't have good lighting, it's not going to be as attractive to look at, and you're going to lose a lot of detail visually. The viewer won't be able to find what you're trying to capture. So, and this makes a difference depending on whether you take pictures indoors or outdoors, and you have leverage in both ways. When taking pictures indoors, do so preferably in daylight next to a window that is large enough to capture all of your subject matter. Otherwise, fluorescent lighting, for instance, works well, and so do lamps, depending on what you're trying to focus on. And I have some examples in the next few slides of what I'm talking about there. When taking pictures outdoors, and if in the middle of the day, do so preferably in a shaded area or when the sky is overcast, or in other words, when it's a cloudy day. Otherwise, your best opportunities are 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset if taking pictures in direct sunlight. And that is called the golden hour, in case you didn't know. Or in other words, your best opportunity throughout the day if you're taking pictures in direct sunlight, either 1 hour after sunrise or 1 hour before sunset. And that also changes depending on what time of the day it is, or what season it is, because our daylight changes throughout the year. So another example of taking pictures indoors is this one here, and it's of a bread baker with some bread that I baked. And this also goes back to other types of other ways to relieve stress. Cooking is also very therapeutic, so that's why I wanted to throw this in there. It's not just about art. But that is the subject matter, and our art medium is clay and pottery. And this was taken in the middle of the day in regard to lighting, and I took it indoors inside a window to capture all the details that you see. And moving on to the next picture, this one was also taken indoors, but it was taken in a closed-in room. Actually, it was in the garage of my workplace. And it didn't matter what time of the day it was because there's no direct sunlight coming in at all. There's no windows whatsoever. But my advantage in this case was having fluorescent lights to really capture what you're looking at here. And by the way, the reason why I wanted to capture tools in this picture is because that's part of the experience in sculpting, and therefore part of the experience of relieving stress in the process using these tools to create what I was going to create. So another indoor example here is next to a window, and the subject matter is a buffalo sculpture made of clay, of course, and this was taken in the middle of the day in my garage next to a window. So I was able to have direct light shine through and capture all these details here. And the black and white aspect of it worked to my advantage because colors and the subject matter's surroundings were darker than that. And I could have done this in color or black and white, but for aesthetics, I thought the black and white really worked well. So going forward, when you take your own pictures, sometimes you can have that leverage too. So in this picture, this was taken indoors, and it's of a chess set that I created recently. And this was taken actually not far from where I captured the bread and the bread baker. In that particular part of my house, I have really good lighting shining through a window to capture all those details, and it was taken in the middle of the day. And now we're moving on to some pictures that were taken outdoors. This one here focuses on capturing a mug that I was sculpting on and creating texture on, and using one of the tools that I just showed you in the other picture. And in regard to lighting, this was taken outdoors on my porch, which is a shaded area. So it wasn't taken directly in sunlight because in the middle of the day, it would have made this appear washed out. I wouldn't have been able to see much of it at all because there would have been too much light. But if you're taking it in the shade with direct sunlight, you're going to have a much better advantage. So in this example, which was taken outdoors, I'm focusing on ornaments as my subject matter, which are made of clay. And I took this in the middle of the day, but the only difference here is that it was taken when the day was overcast. And so yes, it is in direct sunlight, but because the sun was behind the clouds, it wasn't too bright to take that picture. So that was to my advantage in this case. And even though this is about lighting, also getting back to contrast, notice how the background is green in color. This is actually moss from a chimney that was on a house that I grew up in on my old home place. And it worked out really well to complement the red and the clay that you see on these ornaments. And it also helped that there was snow on the ground because the white is a neutral, and that helped my subject matter stand out too in that fashion as well. So this is another picture that was taken outdoors, and it's of my chess set again. And by the way, the art medium for this is clay and paint. These were all hand sculpted, and each of them were painted with acrylic paint. But in regard to lighting, this was taken in the middle of the day, and as you can see in the background, that sun is really bright. And you can just imagine if this chess set was over there, um, it would have been way too bright for my chess set as my subject matter because everything would have appeared too washed out. But in the shade next to this tree here, I was able to get some good lighting in that regard. And at the same time, getting back to contrast, I was able to get these colors to stand out well against something green in color here. Now, I realize that the elements of the subject matter aren't red like what you've seen before in my other pictures, but there's still some separation here because yellow, for instance, is much brighter than green. And the green also matches the green in my other pieces on this side of the chess set, but the greens are far enough away from the background green here to where they're not meshing together. So this was also taken outdoors, but it was taken on my shaded porch, and the subject matter is of a ceramic plate, or in other words, pottery, with some bread rolls on it. So again, this ties in two areas of relieving stress. One is the pottery aspect of it, creating pottery, and the other is of cooking. If cooking again is a way to relieve stress for you, this is just an example to show for that. Taken in the middle of the day on a shaded porch. This was also taken outdoors, and this is one of my coffee mugs, which is made of clay. And I took this late in the day at 7 o'clock, which was my golden hour at that time. And as I said, your golden hour will always change throughout the year depending on the season. And as you can see with the contrast, the rock that it's sitting on is gray in color. Gray is a neutral, so that stands out against any of the colors that you see in the subject matter here. And there is a little bit of moss in the background on these rocks, so the green in that complements the red to some extent. And those are some examples of lighting. We'll move on to composition here. In addition to contrast and good lighting, balance and variety should also be considered. And avoid overcrowding a picture with too many items, objects, or elements that distract from the subject matter of focus. So composition overall is about good balance and arranging a variety of elements in your subject matter to make the picture look appealing to the viewer. Moving on from that, also keep in mind that when featuring very small numbers of objects or elements, whether those are your focus or if they're surrounding your focus, arrange them in amounts of odd numbers, which in other words are 3s, 5s, 7s, 9s, 11s, and so forth. I'm going to scroll back up here to the tools, for instance. I have, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 5 tools in that picture. And I did that on purpose, just to make the odd number of the aspect of having an odd number of objects look appealing to the viewer. Odd numbers they just grab more attention. And also the rule of thirds is something I'll review because that's part of composition. And creating good aesthetics for a picture. That, in other words, don't make your subject matter directly in the center of a picture all the time. Sometimes it works to have your subject matter directly in the center. But a lot of the time, it doesn't have to be symmetrical to be an eye-catching picture. And the rule of thirds is described like this. This guideline proposes that an image should be imagined as divided into 9 equal parts by 2 equally spaced horizontal lines and 2 equally spaced vertical lines, and that important compositional elements should be placed along these lines or their intersections. And I took that from Wikipedia just because it was simple enough to understand. So in other words, if you imagine each picture set up in a way that looks like a tic-tac-toe board, that'll help you adjust your subject matter in a way that fits this description. Now, if you look over here at this chess set, for the most part, this is directly in the center. But I wanted to capture all areas of this chess set because I wanted to capture every single piece. And I didn't want to take a picture of this very far away because the viewer wouldn't be able to see the details of what's on this board. So because of the fact that it's a big project, a big piece of art, showing most of this into the center was fairly necessary. But with that said, I did allow plenty of space above as a margin, and I didn't crop it down to where I was focusing just on everything without some of the background. Some of the background actually helped this. I didn't want to get rid of some of that background. And over here, as you can see, this is just a picture of me working on the pottery wheel. I could have put this pot that I was making directly in the center, but I chose to offset it to where it was in these 2 columns. But at the same time, it's a balanced picture because there isn't any empty space back here. And when I say empty space or negative space, that is background space. The only background space that you see here is the wall. And there's not too much of that space showing there. There's a little bit of it. I tried to create some margin of it so that the edge of the picture wasn't directly on the edge of the pot. I wanted to give it some space, but it's just enough space to help with the aesthetics. Now, if I decided to not crop this and kept the edge over here, then that would have left too much negative space. But this isn't a symmetrical picture because the main focus is the pot and it's not directly in the center. Another couple of examples here. The dragon piece from my chess set, which is a knight piece, by the way, is not directly in the center. It looks pretty close. And if you didn't see these tic-tac-toe board, or if you didn't see these lines like a tic-tac-toe board on it for the rule of thirds, you would think that it was in the center, but it's actually not. I offset it just so ever so slightly so that I can allow some of the background here to be shown. And over here, all these pieces of pottery are in the center, but I don't have one of them shown directly in the center. So let's take a moment and review some pictures that I want to show you in the next few slides based on what we've already talked about. And from each picture, I want you to take this from each one of them. Think about what is balanced and are the rule of thirds used? Are they all symmetrical, in other words? What is the subject matter? How does the subject matter represent ways to relieve stress? Where is the picture taken? What lighting advantages was the photographer able to use? And how is there contrast in each picture? So let's look at this one again. I've already talked about lighting. This was taken on a porch and it was in the shade. And as you can see here with the contrast, the red and the clay stands out against neutral tones in the background because we have a very light gray floor with, and you can't really see this, but it's part of a plant stand, which is kind of brown in color with some grays, so that stands out too. Buffalo sculpture, deep colors in the background. The clay is very light in color. It's a very light gray, so it stood out against the dark elements surrounding it. And it's also a black and white picture, which served to my advantage at the time. Another black and white picture, which is of me working on the pottery wheel. And this is just the process of creating something, which is really the therapeutic aspect of it. This is what relieves stress. I've shown you a lot of final pictures of final products or finished pieces, but they're results of the experience along the way that involved relieving stress while creating that particular item. And this just shows that aspect of it. Also worked to my advantage to have this as black and white because background colors are white in color and they stand out against the color of the clay, which is darker. We've seen this example already, and we'll move on to this one. And it's not a pottery or sculpture. It's just a picture of me sketching. But just look at the colors. Obviously, the outline is dark. You know, it could have been black, but I chose blue because blue is just eye-catching. And black at times is very drab and dull, and it works depending on what you're trying to take a picture of. But I thought the blue would really match another element that was blue in the picture, which is this pencil. So the white paper is standing out against gray elements. So gray is a neutral, white is also a neutral, but these two separate from each other. Now, as a photographer, it's easy to take pictures and rarely ever get captured taking pictures in the process. So this is just a rare photo of me trying to capture my artwork. So while you're taking pictures of your subject matter, I would encourage someone to take a picture of you taking a picture of what you're trying to take a picture of, just to make it that much more eye-catching and just to help with the overall experience. But if we look at the aesthetics of this picture, look at the background. You know, this was taken during the fall, and there's lots of color variety in the trees, and that stands out against the neutral tones in the tree, as well as the clothing that you see that I'm wearing. The red clay stands out against the neutral tones in the background, as well as in the wooden items that are with the pottery. And this was also taken during the golden hour of the day. So as far as lighting goes, that worked out to my advantage in that regard. And there's a close-up of what I was taking a picture of. That's a shaving set. Again, you can see the neutral tones in the background and the red color in the clay. Now the wood is made of oak, so it's an even lighter color than the red. So you can see how these two separate. Now, if these two tones were very similar, what I would have done is I would have separated the wooden stand from the mug, because otherwise the two red tones would have blended together and I wouldn't have been able to separate the two as well. but because both of them were different colors, I was able to overlap them a little bit for aesthetics. There's another shaving set, only this time it's a different set, first of all, and the colors are a little bit darker. And this gets back to what I was saying in the last slide. The wood in this case is made of black walnut, and it's very close in color to the shaving bowl. So I chose to separate those two so that they wouldn't blend in as well, or so that I would be able to separate both elements. Just a close up of the shaving stand there. Look in the background, I have greens in the trees, which stands out against the brown tones in the wooden items. And gray in the wood is neutral, so that automatically stands out from every other color that you see. And this was also taken in the golden hour of the day, which was 1 hour before sunset. Here's another close-up of, or rather I should say, different angles of the bottle stopper that I showed you before. And as you can see, I chose a green tree for my background, which was a perfect complement to the red tones in the clay. So we have complementary tones here. And the rustic wooden table that it's standing on in this picture is gray, as I reviewed before. And in these two pictures, you don't see the table really. You do in this one a little bit, but of course my skin tone here stands out against the everything else that you see. So overall, the colors are balanced, and there's not too much negative space. And I tried to offset the subject matter to where it wasn't symmetrical. As you can see with this center one here, it's not directly in the center. I wanted some of this green to show, but not too much of it. If this picture was all the way out to here to the edge, it would have been way too much. I would have had to crop that down to where there would have been some margin here. But I left just enough of a margin to capture this green to help draw in all the colors. So this one here is of some bowls with some vegetables that I grew. And in the background, I have a green shrub to stand out against the red tones in the bowls. And I tried to pick vegetables that were that had colors that stood out against the colors in the subject matter. The yellows and the tomatoes were almost complementary to the red, since yellow is pretty close to green, or very, very close to light green anyway. And it's also just much lighter, significantly lighter than the red anyway. Same over here with the green. And the surface that it's on is a gray rustic wooden table, which is a neutral, so that helped everything stand out. And I tried to crop this down to where everything was in the center, so this is kind of symmetrical, but at the same time, individual items here are not directly in the center. They're all offset. Now I have several pictures of the chess set that I'll show you, just because since it's a big set and there's lots of different pieces in it, I just wanted to show you some close-up of what some of these pieces looked like, and also show you how it ties into basic concepts of photography. So again, this is not directly in the center, but I didn't want to, I wanted to focus on everything in this particular picture, and not stand back too far away, because if I had done that, then I wouldn't have been able to or my viewer rather, wouldn't have been able to see the details that you see here, since it's a big project and there's a lot of different pieces. Now, playing board games, like I said, is another form of relieving stress. So if that is your subject matter, then you can think about that. I'm tying in board games as well as the artistic aspect of my subject matter here, both of those at the same time. So in this picture, colors stand out. To some extent, they complement each other, but at least they all separate from the surrounding elements in the picture. There's another close-up of the light side of the game. The yellow tones stand out against the dark green. And also look at texture of whatever your elements are. Um, a chessboard is divided up into squares, and the squares just help with the aesthetics of the picture. I wanted to show some of those off, just to help draw the eye into everything. Moving on to the dark side of the game. Again, squares that are on the board. These pieces are green, and I'm aware that the surroundings are also green, but I decided to take a picture from this angle because the green tones in the background here in the grass and the trees are lighter in color than the green tone in these pieces. So they do stand out. So you don't have to follow complementary colors to a T, just as long as everything separates. Now over here, the green that you see in the leaves are a little bit darker than the elements behind everything here that you see with the pieces. Or in other words, it's darker back here than it is in the background over here. So I would have avoided taking pictures of my pieces in front of the leaves a little bit more, just because I'm afraid I would have lost some of the focus here if I had done that. Just another picture of the set. Now this one is symmetrical, and it works really well in this case just because of capturing the entire chess set. So again, sometimes symmetry works. There's another close-up of the knight pieces. And these are from the darker side. I do have the background with those dark leaves, but I was able to zoom in on these two with my camera, and a lot of cameras have that zoom setting and that focal setting to where it blurs out the background, so that helped me in this case. And again, I wanted to show off some of the squares on the board, but these two pieces aren't directly in the center. Now, with that said, the margins are about equal in their size on each side of these two pieces. But if I was to divide this up into lines for the rule of thirds, each piece is offset a little bit. And I also turned them in different positions to where that helped with the aesthetics of the picture, rather than having them face the same direction. Although I do have these two horses facing in the same direction. So we can go either way, but in this picture, I just wanted to show how different both of these sculptures looked, even though they are from the light side of the game, but they're sculpted a little bit differently from each other. and they're also slightly at different heights. I intended to make them just as tall, but that unintentionally didn't happen, but still they work for the game. And but it kind of worked to my advantage with them being different sizes and sculpted in different ways, just for the photography aspect of it, just so that the viewer can see that they both look a little bit different. Now the yellow obviously stands out against green in the background, and I have the squares here. Tried not to crop this in too much because I wanted some of the squares to be shown, just for um, well, partly because of texture, because of the wood grain, just so that we could capture that, help draw the eye in a little bit. It's just another angle of the bread rolls on the plate. Again, a neutral color for the rustic wooden table, standing out against various colors in the plate. And the bread is very light in color anyway, kind of a yellowish brown, beige color almost, which is more or less, it is a neutral. So the color of the bread is a neutral in itself. So that stands out against the plate. And it's also a different color or a different neutral tone than what you see on the surface, which is the table. Again, this was taken on a shaded porch, which worked to my advantage with the lighting. I just included a recipe here that I made for some banana bread. And as you can see, it's on the same plate. And this was also taken indoors, and it was at nighttime. But I had a lamp shining on this so that I could get the details that I wanted to see in regard to lighting. And here's a coffee mug. Like most of my pottery items, the clay is red in color, which stands out against everything in its surroundings, which is green. And you've seen this background before, which has the moss in it that's on that chimney that I was talking to you about. And some of that is also here in the foreground around the mug. I took this in the wintertime. So the white in the background is a neutral in itself, and that stands out against the red. But for the most part, green dominates the background, which stands out against the red tones of the mug. And there's also red in the glaze here, which stands out against the green. Okay, so here's a flower pot. This is actually a collage that I made. The background is just for fun with a setting that I used to make this look green. But this is one of the original pictures in its original state. As you can see, again, the pottery is red, and it stands out against the sky, which is it looks white here just because I had to lighten up the picture a little bit, but still the red separates from that color in the background. And you can see some of the gray tone on the surface of it, which is a neutral. Now this piece was also taken pretty much in the center of the picture, which was my focus for the collage. But as you can see in the background here, if you disregard the fun colors that you see with the green, you can tell that the subject matter is not in the center. Actually, it's way over toward the left. But since I took this from a bug's eye view, I was able to leave a lot of the margin from this side to help with the aesthetics of the picture. But again, this was a collage. It was meant to show both pictures, just to show different parts of the subject matter. But um, for this one here, it still works symmetrically as it does asymmetrically. Now, this is an editing program that you can download. It's called Picasa, and it's free, and it's like Photoshop in a way, and it comes with lots of different settings that you can use to edit your pictures. And if you have any questions for me about this particular program, I will be glad to share more with you. And here is my contact information in case you're ever wanting to ask me any other questions or questions relating to today's lesson. And I've enjoyed sharing this with you today. I hope that it's been helpful to you. And just remember that practice always makes perfect. And no matter how skilled you are, you can always take good pictures with a basic device like a point and shoot or a cell phone. Just remember that your eye visually is what also helps to create pictures. But most importantly, practice makes perfect. Thank you very much, guys, and you all have a good day, and we'll catch you another time.